Hey there, welcome to the channel. So today we want to go over a few things. We have a little more crypto crash action going, as well as potential indications that we are in fact in recession. So let's go take a look. All right, so first of all, look in the SPY today. This week it was down a little bit, but today it was up a little bit. So really not much action today, I would say, for the SPY. Let me just look at the weekly. So those are your SPY. You can see you're kind of in the downtrend. Nothing's really changed here. Let's look at our Russell 2000, same kind of thing. Dow Jones Industrials, same kind of thing. I'm going to look at my natural gas ETF. Look at that thing, got the crap kicked out of it. Whew, look at that. What did our USO do today? Just kind of check on this oil. Yeah, kind of had pulled off. I don't know if there'll be an opportunity on that at some point. And then we had a lot of activity on the yields today. Yeah, look at the way the yields drop. So the implication here is that if the 10-year yield is dropping, that implies that the price of the bonds are going up. So that's kind of interesting. Now, one of the things that you see here is, yeah, we kind of really, the yields kind of dropped off. So that kind of implies that the bond pricing is going up. There's some demand for bonds. Now, that's kind of interesting because it makes you wonder, like when you're dealing with these, people with a lot of money, they're not just prone to just be like, hey, going into cash. So, you see the yield coming down. It's not necessarily a positive thing. Obviously, higher yields, higher interest rates for car loans, for home loans, suppresses that economic activity. So them being lower, of course, would be better. But the implication is that money's coming out of somewhere and it's going into bonds. And most likely, it may very well, in fact, be coming out of the stock market to some extent. So it was interesting because apparently we had some significant outflows. I think last week we had some outflows. Someone was reporting in that. You check yourself. But if we actually did have like a 10 billion in outflows, maybe it showed up in the bond market this week. Who knows? So, yeah, so that's kind of what I see right now for the stock market. All right, so let's go to the crypto news. Oh, I'm just loving this stuff. Okay, major crypto broker Voyager Digital suspends all trading, deposits, and withdrawals. Woo, look at that. So Voyager Digital is in trouble. Why is that? Well, let's take a look. Okay, so here I've made my diagram, trying to kind of figure out kind of the nested nature of things. But the epicenter appears to still be right now Three Arrows Capital. So this thing is reported that they're seeking or in liquidation right now. And just a couple notes they had, I was reading articles today and like they had exposure 200 to 450 million in Luna. They also at one point back in January had exposure to Grayscale of 1.3 billion. So, the Grayscale is off with Bitcoin. Luna went to zero. So these guys are really hurting. And, this has been in the news. Now, here is kind of the interesting thing because they are basically most likely going into bankruptcy, leaving Voyager screwed over here. They're basically, leaving Voyager with a $600 million, something like that hole. So that's why Voyager is in a sticky wicket right now. They're in really big trouble, right? Because they're just like, okay, this $600, they're not getting it back. It's a very interesting thing because have you ever been involved in some of this type of, when things go into liquidation or things go into like receivership and they start putting, basically they'll get some kind of a business law firm to kind of handle the liquidation and the receivership, they would call it. And when they get into that, they're going to spend millions and millions looking for everything is blah, blah, blah. Everything that comes back to someone, everything goes in the pool, right? And then the judge has to approve any disbursements from that pool. And you're lucky if you get pennies on the dollar. So basically Voyager is screwed. They're owed 600 million on top of all the other stuff they were doing. I mean, in a way, how different were they from Three Arrows? But these guys probably had Luna. They probably had exposure to Bitcoin, ETH, all this other stuff. Who knows what other stuff they had? But so now that's what, we see reported today in CNBC that, hey, they're suspending customer withdrawals and activity. So I would suspect speculation, they're done. They're done. Now, here's the next one. So now go to the next one, Alameda Research. Look at these guys. It was reported that they had lent $200 million to Voyager. Now Voyager is in big trouble. Voyager is spending withdrawals. Hello, Alameda. You ain't getting your 200 back. You just have an IOU. I mean, it's coming. So that would be my expectation. Probably sometime next week, it'll be reported that Alameda will either have to get some funding somewhere, but most likely, who's going to pour money into it? I mean, if you're someone that you poured money into Three Arrows, like Voyager Digital, hey, you poured money to Three Arrows and you basically caused yourself to go bankrupt. So that's kind of where we're at now. So I suspect that they're not going to get the money. They're next in line. I was reading as well about Three Arrows, and there's all these other kind of little companies and other exchanges, a couple million here, 6 million here. So it's just a lot of big question mark about how much is out there, how many other people they owed money to, et cetera. And the issue that they have is, when they announce this, they kind of say, well, they say temporarily suspending, just as, back in 72, the U.S. government temporarily suspended the gold window, the ability to convert your dollars to gold, right? My guess is these are permanent things. The only possible way would be a miracle if Bitcoin price suddenly jumped through the roof. But I don't see that happening. So let's go look back at the Bitcoin price. If we look at the Bitcoin price on the daily chart, we see we really kind of had a bad week in it. It was not as bad as some of these other weeks where you had these stretches of really bad stuff. But look, we had come up a little bit, tried to get to 22,000, been fading it all week, getting down closer to that 18,000. And so let's look at the weekly on this guy. And you can just see that, look, it's just blood, and 12,000, 10,000, somewhere in there is maybe where you'll see something. The other thing, going back to our crypto mess, Voyager is on the Toronto Exchange. Very odd that, this was reported today. Now, Toronto Exchange, I suspect it was not open today, but it didn't look like it traded much today, because if we look at this here, they actually, they've been just utterly destroyed, right? But the last few days this week, they had a couple, strong up days and then a kind of a draw day. So they were getting beat up. And then they did have one day where they kind of actually recovered by 10 or 15%. So I don't know what was up with that. I don't know why it would go up. My only guess would be is that there'd be some shorts in there that are saying, hey, you know what? I'm done. I shorted this thing at 20 and it's below $1. I'll just take my profits and get out instead of having to wait for something else. Really good question. I don't know. If you're sitting there, you borrowed shares, you have to return them. But if the company goes bankrupt, do you have to return the shares? I assume at a certain point when the stock is officially delisted, but maybe not. Maybe you still have to return it. And maybe if you actually can't buy the shares anymore, maybe it creates some kind of headache for you. I don't know. Just a thought. Someone leave a comment below if you have experience with that. Now, I want to turn to the general economy. Interesting. So we had, and I'm looking over here, trading economics or chart. This is what we call, and I wanted to look at, so right now the ISM manufacturing services is above 50. So it's still not showing recession, right? I'm sorry, not recession, but it's not showing contraction, right? This type of index, 50 is neutral, below 50 is showing contraction, and then above 50 shows growth. But what happened is we're looking at what's surprising here is the new orders sub index went to 49.2. So we see this contraction in the new orders. Now, of course, the new orders are looking ahead, of course. And so that's why it's something to look at. So the question would be, well, okay, new orders just went below 50. And the last time it did that was basically going into the shutdown of the Cerveza. And it actually did that earlier in 2019 as well. So it's definitely a negative sign for the economy there. Definitely have slow growth in those new orders. So that's kind of pointing to a really slow economy. Now, look at the next one that's out there, GDP now. So basically the Atlanta Fed, this is kind of good. We have the St. Louis Fed, all kinds of data. I mean, I think it's really good that they do collect this data and make it just available to us all so that we can just look at it. But there's another one here, Atlanta Fed, and they have this GDP now. And so what's happening is with this GDP now is they just updated it. So it says latest estimate minus 2.1%. So what that means is they have a model of the GDP. So they're predicting that right now they've updated it to a negative 2.1% for the second quarter. So what's happening is, think about it. So that means we're in a recession. We had 3 updates to the first quarter GDP. If you remember, it came out at minus 1.4, then it was updated minus 1.5, and then minus 1.6. So as they updated that every time, and they're spread by a month apart or something, or 3 weeks or something. And now we have this kind of GDP model forecasting a second quarter of negative GDP. So technically, 2 negative quarters of GDP is considered a recession. So what this means, and just the revisions as well on the first quarter, is that the economy has rapidly declined in this quarter, and that's kind of what you see. Because it's interesting here, looking at that look how it's just fallen off a cliff. They were trying to hold it, and then boom, it just fell off a cliff. So this is a model, so this isn't the actual GDP, but I assume they're not that far off the mark. But that's interesting here. I'm not seeing a comparison directly to compare like the actual versus the estimate. But right now it's kind of pointing to the economy like really slowing down. So in summary, we have some data showing, slowdown in the economy. We get another Voyager Digital, just another incremental, just another broken link in the chain of crypto. That's awesome. That's good. Another broken link in the blockchain. Yeah. And so that I would expect to continue. Looking for Alameda to bite the dust next. So take what you can get. Talk to you later. Bye.